This is a video of a little known event outside of the country of Iceland, an event that was only officially resolved in 2015. This event had allowed technically for the killing of Spaniards and Basque peoples in a region of Iceland, via a law known in English as well, the Icelandic Basque Law. How did this happen? Well, let's go back to the 16th century, in Iceland, where our story begins. Or, well, no, the story begins in Newfoundland and Labrador, and the arrival of whalers from the Basque country. No, wait, okay, let's go back to the Basque country and southern France. So we're in the region of the Basque country. It's the 16th century, and the Basque peoples are known across Europe as some of the best whalers. While in the Basque country and Spain, whale meat was not really consumed, although it did find popularity in other nations. Overall though, meat was not the main product of interest. Instead, this era was marked by an intense demand for whale oil, which was used in fuel for lamps and for lubrication. As early as the 1540s, the Basque people established a temporary whaling station along the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador, where whales were abundant. From here, they encroached ever closer to Iceland and eventually made contact with the Icelandics, particularly around the region of Westfjords, which was particularly rich in whaling activity. How did the Basque people and Icelandic groups communicate together? Well, who knows, but they did, and trading became common between both groups. Over time, an Icelandic Basque pidgin language even emerged, which must have sounded incredible. The Basque whalers would typically arrive in Iceland during the summer months, hunt whales, and then return to Europe in the autumn months with barrels of whale oil, blubber, and other valuable products. Their presence in Iceland was generally tolerated. However, over time, tensions began to boil up and exploded into a series of events known as the Slaying of the Spaniards. So, in September 1615, 3 Basque whaling ships under the command of Martin de Villafranca were caught in a violent storm off the coast of Westfjords in northwestern Iceland. The ships were destroyed near the town of Isfjordur, leaving approximately 80 Basque soldiers stranded. The Basque sailors were left with few supplies and were forced to come ashore, seeking food and shelter from the local Icelandic population. Now, this wasn't too uncommon. Storms happened before and sailors ended up on the shores of Iceland, so it's not like the local population was that fazed by it. However, as time passed, tensions grew, particularly over limited resources. The Basque sailors were accused of theft, taking sheep, food and supplies from Icelandic farms to survive. Icelanders, who lived in harsh conditions and were themselves dependent on limited resources, saw this as a serious threat to their livelihood. There was also reports of violence from the Basques, but this is debated. So along comes the district governor, or let's say sheriff, of the region of Westfjords. His name is Ari Magnusson. He took charge of the situation, and he convened a local assembly to discuss how to deal with the Basque sailors. The assembly declared the Basques to be outlaws, meaning they were no longer protected by Icelandic law. Under Icelandic tradition, outlawry meant that anyone could be killed, and this also included the Basques. Ari Magnusson issued a decree ordering that all Basques in the regions were to be killed. His reasoning was twofold. He saw the Basques as a threat to the safety and resources of the local population, and also at the time Icelandic law was very strict, and the stealing or threatening of livelihoods of others was considered a serious crime. In the isolated and resource-scarce environment of Westfjords, such actions could not be tolerated. In the days and weeks following the assembly, Ari Magnusson and his brave men launched a series of coordinated attacks on the stranded Basque sailors. The first killings resulted in 12 Basque sailors being killed. The second killings resulted in 9 Basque sailors being killed, and the third and final killings resulted in 11 Basque sailors being killed, which brought the total to 32 Basque sailors being killed during these attacks, which marks the largest massacre of Basques in a foreign land to this date. The remaining Basques who had either evaded capture or eventually left Iceland or died of exposure. The actions of Ari Magnusson were actually legal under the laws of Iceland at the time, as the Basques had been declared outlaws by the local assembly. No one was actually punished for the killings, and the incident was seen as a lawful response to the perceived threat posed by the Basque sailors. The massacre severely damaged, as you can imagine, relations between Iceland and the Basque country. Even though the Basque sailors had been a significant presence in Icelandic waters, the violence of 1615 effectively ended their whaling expeditions to the island. In the wider context of European maritime exploration, the incident was relatively isolated and a lot of people didn't really care about it. The memory of the massacre has persisted in local Icelandic folklore and historical records. Icelandic sagas and annals of the time document the event, ensuring that it will be remembered as a dark chapter in the history of Iceland. In a symbolic gesture of reconciliation, the 400-year-old decree that had allowed for the killing of Basque people in Iceland was officially repealed in 2015. The repeal was made by the local authorities in the Westfjord region, because the law was not a nationwide Icelandic law and can only be repealed by the authorities in the Westfjord region where it applied. So while the decree was officially valid until 2015, it had not been enforced for centuries, as you can imagine, and it was largely a historical anecdote by the time it was officially repealed. So there we have it, a quick and weird look into the area of Icelandic Basque relations. Basques, which of course is a topic that is always at the front of everyone's interest. So thanks for watching, and hopefully we can put out a few more videos going forward. Thank you.